Hi, it's Dennis Daly. Back in the 1970s, when I was working in radio in Vincennes, Indiana, I began to do a talk show with a Catholic priest, Father Peter Fehrenbach. He moved back to Canada. We decided to do the show on both stations at once. We didn't know whether anybody had ever done a U.S.-Canadian radio show, but we thought we'd try it. Now, from the 1970s, from the 1970s with Father Peter Fehrenbach, a little bit of Let's Talk About It.
Yes, Dennis, actually, our weather here was not that warm. I understand that there was a little bit of snow in Indianapolis, so we had some up here. I don't think we had as much as Indianapolis did. Our temperature Wednesday evening around midnight was about 24, 25 degrees, with the wind adding a chill factor, bringing it down to about something the equivalent of 5 degrees above zero. But then up in Alaska, around Anchorage, I understand it was a lot warmer.
You, I believe, spoke to the gentleman who we hope to be hooking up with in just a few moments, Dr. Paul Marks, Wednesday, and he said it was, what, in the 50s up there?
Yeah, right. And now, mind you, the cold evening likely hadn't set in up there yet the way it has down here.
But they will get theirs before this winter is over.
Oh, they sure will.
Father Pete, our topic tonight is a combination of two things. Euthanasia, which is not small children running around in Siam. It's mercy killing, coupled with abortion. And for those that have a hard time relating to mercy killing, it's kind of the opposite of abortion. There are, I understand, in the United States, some moves afoot, and maybe you can attest to some in Canada, to legalize letting an elderly person die if they are, for example, in a nursing home or a hospital. Maybe they're a vegetable, and they require a great amount of medicine, and the family is expending a great amount of money with very little hope of them ever coming out of their disease or illness, to maintain them just, quote, living, unquote, to make it permissible to cease these extraordinary measures and to simply let them pass on.
Dennis, I don't think I would define that description of mercy killing as euthanasia. I wouldn't even call it mercy killing because, as you describe it, they're just passing on, so to speak. Euthanasia, strictly speaking, is where some drug or whatever is used to put the individual out of his or her misery, something like what you do when you're shooting an animal or something like that that's in pain.
For a person, for example, in a car wreck who is severely maimed, who the family realizes will maybe have had a severed spine or something, and be not only incapacitated but thoroughly miserable if they do live.
And of course, this is the whole thing, you know. Now, mind you, this is what seems to be going on, and later on in the program, when both of us will be talking with Dr. Marks, we'll be able to, I think, get some clearer specification of how this is going on in your country, in the United States. But there have been moves up here in Ontario to legalize this to some extent.
Pete,
Mm-hmm.
I know even though a lot of people got some negative vibrations from Dr. Marks when he was on the program last year, possibly for two reasons. First of all, someone said to me they thought he was a little bit preachy, but I think it's very difficult for someone who is closely aligned, who has studied in theology and has as deep a conviction for life as Dr. Marks does, to not sound like that. But the other thing was possibly that, you know, the people that were critical of him simply were feeling the pinch of you know, their own feelings being contradicted. I think it might be worthwhile before we are able to talk to Dr. Marks, and I hope we can make connection in the next 5 or 10 minutes. He has just this evening, I understand, returned from an extensive speaking engagement in Alaska where you had spoken with him.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be worthwhile, since it might embarrass the doctor to ask him to give us his resume when he is on the line, and he being more wordy than you are, why don't you briefly, for those listeners, specifically at CKKW in Canada, and for those listeners that may have missed the program in Vincennes, wrap up what Dr. Marks said, what his actual ideas are on the subject of abortion, and that would be a pretty good lead-in to trying to get him on the line to then expound on this for our listeners, specifically in his new area of mercy killing.
All right, Dennis, although I do think that he'll want to bring you a little bit more up to date on some of the later findings in abortion, some of the things that have been occurring in the country just within the past year. So I would hope that you will allow him to talk on that area, because this is the area of his stress, where he, as a sociologist, has not been doing that much work yet with euthanasia, since it's just something that's, you know, coming upon the scene, so to speak. But very basically, his position is anti-abortion. He makes no bones about it. People who are pro-abortion, who argue with him or discuss with him or whatever, you know, haven't really been able to come up with any argument that can adequately countermand, in a logical sense at least, the position that he's taken. Of course, being pro-life at this time is perhaps unpopular, but it's unpopular only with those who are pro-abortion. There seems to be quite a movement in quite a few of the cities, and Dr. Marks will be able to say something to you about this. There seems to be quite a movement. Birthright, Alliance for Life, you know, organizations like this that have developed quite a tremendous following, where people are just simply concerned about the basic issue of the right for life. In fact, there is one organization called it simply Right to Life. So these people are trying to make their point heard, and the basic point is simply this, that once you do have a life, don't snuff it out, don't kill it. There are other ways of handling a situation than killing. And of course, this is the position I think that Dr. Marks has taken. I think too that when we talk about the problem of overpopulation, this of course can be a real issue, especially in the heavily populated areas. And you might want to comment with Dr. Marks a little bit on that, and what the demographers have been talking about, predicting, you know, overpopulation for both Canada and the United States.
Father Pete?
Yes, Dennis.
It's coming up on 8:40 here, and we do have a rather stringent timetable to keep, because I should explain to our listeners very quickly, both your listeners and our listeners, in the past we have shared guests, but because of the problems we've run into the past couple of weeks with phone circuits, I think we do the listeners at either end a disservice when they have to sit and strain their ears to catch every word. So we're going to try to make contact with Dr. Marks here for 30 minutes or so, while you discuss your ideas and your listeners' ideas on the topics. Then when Dr. Marks has concluded speaking with us, we'll switch him over to your number, and permit you to talk to him directly, and quite possibly before the program is up, shortly before 10 our time, 11 your time, we can get back together and see if we've accomplished anything.
Very good, Dennis. It would be a very good idea, and I certainly look forward to talking with you a little bit, at least before the end of the program.
Thank you, Father Peter Fehrenbach, and listeners of CKKW in Kitchener, Ontario. We are in the midst right now of trying to get Dr. Paul Marks on the phone to see exactly what he has to say about the controversial topics of abortion and mercy killing. And we'll be back to see how successful that phone call is after these reminders.
Let's Talk About It is a public affairs presentation of the WAOV stations presented each Sunday night at this time. The opinions expressed on the Let's Talk About It program are not those of our sponsors or the management of WAOV AM and FM. This is WAOV AM and FM, Vincennes, Indiana.
You know, in the whole run of that series, I think we got one telephone call, and it was a wrong number. I'm Dennis Daly.